Listen as I read 2 Corinthians 5, verses 6 through 14. So we are always of good courage. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Yes, we are of good courage, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil. Therefore, knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade others. But what we are is known to God, and I hope it is known also to your conscience. We are not commending ourselves to you again, but giving you cause to boast about us, so that you may be able to answer those who boast about outward appearance and not about what is in the heart. For if we are beside ourselves, it is for God. If we are in our right mind, it is for you. For the love of Christ controls us, because we have concluded this, that one has died for all, therefore all have died. This is the word of the Lord.
Praise Jesus Christ.
Peace be with you. My name is Kyle, and I'm on staff here at Sojourn, and it's an honor to be sharing the word with you today. Matt is on vacation, and we're so thankful that he can get some much-needed rest with his family. And speaking of his family, I'd like to do a little shout-out to some newlywed herons here. So good to see you guys. Yeah. You know, Matt told me as I was prepping for sermons a while back that you just have to get your reps in, Kyle. You know, it usually takes about 500 sermons till you find your groove. So good news, I only have 497 to go, and I'll be good. Thanks for digging in with me and maybe taking notes or just being present as we continue Here's to the Crazy Ones. This summer, we've been examining Hebrews 11, the Hall of Faith. These are people with faith that didn't make sense, faith that believed the impossible, faith that endured immense hardship, that according to Hebrews, the world was not worthy of them. And the writer of Hebrews says there are so many more stories I could tell. So we moved into the lives of Christians through the last 20 centuries who exemplify this. Last week, Matt shined a light on St. Patrick and his mission in Ireland. Well, friends, today I want to introduce you to one of the most wild, tenacious, passionate, influential women in the history of the church, and how she can point us to the beauty and depth of the gospel. St. Teresa of Avila. Not Mother Teresa of Calcutta. That's probably the Teresa us Protestants are more familiar with. But we're going to go back over 500 years to a truly unique woman who devoted her life to pursuing God. So let's take a look at Teresa's life. We're going to Spain. Spain is feeling great right now, fresh off a World Cup win. First time that both men and women's teams won the World Cup at the same time. So in 1515, Teresa was born in Avila, Spain. She had 11 siblings, a really vivid imagination. She had an early fascination with God. She famously, at the age of 7, ran away with her brother because they wanted to become martyrs. At 12, her mother passed away, and her teenage years found her absorbed in kind of the usual distractions and romances and worldly concerns. But by the age of 20, she was convinced that God called her to a life of devotion. So she secretly left her father's house to join a convent. But that didn't mean she had surrendered herself to God. For nearly 20 years, she lived like many of us do, the strange, divided life. She prayed, she loved God, she experienced profound things in prayer, and yet she kept hiding parts of herself, holding parts of herself back. Has anyone else been there? Divided life? You want to live for God, but you're holding parts of yourself back. This was her struggle for 20 years. And then around at the age of 40, something broke open in her. While she was gazing at the image of the wounded Christ, she encountered the love of God in a way that she could no longer evade. And her divided life became a life of surrender. Soon after, she had another experience that we call the transverberation, and a lot of art has been made from this experience. where she encountered an angel with an arrow that pierced her heart. She says it like this: I saw in his hands a long golden dart, and at the tip of the spearhead, it seemed to me there was a fire. I felt him plunge it into my heart several times, leaving me completely afire with a great love of God. The pain was so sharp that I cried out, and yet so sweet that I could not possibly wish it to cease. The soul can never be content with less than God. So Teresa, at age 45, got to work. The Spain of Teresa's time was fiercely Catholic, influenced by the Spanish Inquisition. The Reformation was just happening at this time, and there was hardly an option for being Protestant in Spain. But she was part of the Counter-Reformation within the Catholic Church because her heart, too, broke for corruption and shallowness, and she saw church going astray, and she wanted deep reform. And so reform happened. She recruited energetic, courageous, bold women. She wasn't trying to produce a community of timid nuns. She wanted women who would build convents and negotiate with bishops and manage finances and endure hardship. She was an extraordinary executive and strategist and builder in an era where women couldn't hold public office or own property. She did grassroots work. So for over 20 years, traveling on a mule across Spain, often in really bad sickness and in poor health, she founded 17 reform convents where both noble women and poor women alike lived under the exact same humble rules without social hierarchy. But the most influential part of her life was her writings, deeply personal and pretty revolutionary for the time. So I'll be drawing from her masterpiece, which is The Interior Castle, which is out on the book wall if you want to grab a copy. What I personally love about Teresa is that for a person who had some truly profound spiritual encounters, I mean pretty far out stuff, she is so down to earth. And she writes about practical struggles in her prayer life. She experienced deep emotional burnout. She wrestled with self-deception. Am I making this up? She struggled with distraction. Anyone in prayer life? She struggled with boredom. Anyone in prayer life? She struggled with boredom more than anyone here. So she's endured it. Prayer for Teresa was in all of life. And I mean all of life. There's an old anecdote that while she was relieving herself one day on the latrine, she was praying, as she always does. And the devil appeared, mocking her for praying in such an undignified place. And in classic Teresa wit, she said, "What comes out of my mouth is for God. What comes out the other end is for you." So she's a fireball. But all of life was one of her themes. She taught that the Lord walks among the pots and pans. Her point was that God is encountered not only in ecstasy, but also while cooking and cleaning and doing ordinary work. You have to understand, in this time period, this was revolutionary for many people who imagined that holiness happened only in the chapel. Now, her prayer life led to some truly remarkable encounters and visions and experiences, things that might even make us uncomfortable. But although Teresa experienced astonishing visions of God, again, she gets practical, warning people, don't chase visions, don't desire ecstasies, don't think that mystical experiences make you holy. Instead, the real marks of holiness are humility and love and obedience. So she had zero patience for spiritual elitism or emotional experiences that didn't produce just tangible good works. So I picked her because this isn't just some mystic who floated through life with her head in the clouds. She loved a good meal. She laughed often. She filled her writings with humor and wit and beauty, as if to say that the closer we draw to God, the more alive and joyful and fully human we become. She would insist that she's just like you and me. So why did I pick Teresa for Hebrews 11, for the crazy ones? And why 2 Corinthians 5 is the passage? You'll notice some strikingly similar themes in these two passages. And I think Corinthians helps us connect some themes in Hebrews more. In Hebrews 11, one of the themes right away, faith is the conviction of things not seen. Corinthians, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Hebrews talks about exile, that this is not our true home. They desire a better country, a heavenly one. Corinthians, we'd rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. While we wait, there's challenges. Hebrews says they went about destitute, afflicted, mistreated. This was Teresa's life. And Corinthians says, while we are in this tent, we groan and are burdened. There's also the theme of pleasing him. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. And Corinthians says we make it our goal to please him. And then there is this idea of reward. He rewards those, Hebrews says, who seek him. Each of us will receive what is due. So in many ways, Teresa is exactly the kind of person that fits these themes. She doesn't really belong to the world. She aims to please God. And we have this myth in our culture that crazy people who devote their life to prayer and fasting and service to God, they end up being boring and stale and kind of personality-less. But if I had to sum up Teresa, she embodies this idea that holiness, solitude, and devotion don't diminish personality, but expand it into something more vivid and courageous and deeply human. That is, to be a fully alive human is to know your interior world. So today I want to focus on this, what it means to be crazy enough to explore the interior life. By faith, Teresa went where many dare not go. So let's talk about exterior and interior, the outside world and the inside world. Human beings are, roughly speaking, right in the middle horizon of the universe. Here's what I mean. You can go really big and far out this way, the visible things, and you can go really focused and private and deep this way into the invisible things. For all that you see on the exterior, there is similarly as much and sometimes even more on the interior, the unseen. So let me give you an example. If you take every single grain of sand on every beach in the entire world, so just imagine that for a second. Go in your mind to Elk Rapids or Esha Beach. Grab even just a fistful of sand. Now picture all the grains of sand on every beach in the whole entire world. There are roughly 1,000 times more stars in the observable universe. Right? Okay. So that means for every grain of sand, there's 1,000 stars represented there. That's how big we can go out. Now, this will blow your mind even more. Take all the stars. There are roughly 10,000 times more atoms in your body alone than all the stars in the known universe. So for every star that you see, there are 10,000 times more atoms in your body. One drop of water has more atoms than the stars of the Milky Way galaxy. Billions of times more atoms in one drop of water. That's insane. The point here is that as far out as you want to expand, you can also go just as far in. The universe outside you that you can see, I think we'd all agree, is staggering. I mean, it's vast. But so is the vastness of the unseen universe within you. And this is true for the kingdom. We can see the kingdom in the external realm. It's expanding and shaping societies and how we think about justice and economics. It's visible, but it's also happening within us. Jesus at the throne of our souls, transforming the kingdom of Kyle as he's shaping everything in there. And it's true for the gospel. It's outwardly going to the ends of the earth. It's producing real, visible, exterior fruit in relationships and miracles and changing villages and fighting for peace. But it's also, the gospel is happening in the unseen, right? Matt asks us, has the gospel gone all the way down? You've probably heard him say that. Our thought patterns, our motives, our desires. Is the gospel affecting our interior life? So the exterior is vitally important. What you do, how people see your good works, Jesus created it. He speaks about it. His kingdom is pervading everything that we can see. But today, we're exclusively just going to focus on what happens in here, what we can't see. And I know a lot of people who won't dare to go there. They can be CEOs and building businesses, changing cultures. They can be about everything: politics, cars, money, career, raising kids, exploring worlds, climbing mountains, conquering the world, but they don't dare go in here because it won't happen on their terms. Teresa was crazy enough to plumb the depths of the soul. By faith, Teresa explored the soul's journey towards knowing Christ. So Augustine in the 4th century began directing the human gaze inward. Greek and Roman philosophy primarily searched for truth externally in the cosmos or in civic order. And Augustine showed the church the human soul contains this vast private inner landscape where we can encounter God. He says this, "You were within me, but I was outside myself, seeking you." He's saying with regret, I've spent a lifetime in the exterior life, and I've come to it a bit late, but here you were the whole time. So 1,000 years later, Teresa picks up on this, and she takes the same inward journey and gives us a map. She was, I would say, in the church, the great cartographer of the unseen inner world. So she lays out the picture of the soul as this beautiful crystal castle with 7 mansions. These mansions represent different stages or struggles or graces from God as a person is drawn towards the light of Christ. And what this did, especially in the last century for us, is it helped people see prayer as not just an occasional thing or a list of requests, but an entire way of living. That the interior life is not a dark, mysterious void to just be feared and ignored, but a vast, radiant space where God dwells and desires to converse with us. Now you might be wondering, okay, but isn't this just navel-gazing? Doesn't it just lead to self-centeredness? Well, it can, depending on who's on the throne. So the whole New Age system says, just go inside, find your true self, find your truth, search out yourself, find your truth. And it sounds nice and freeing and exciting and self-absorbing. It's crap. Here's why. I'll explain why. If you try and plumb the depths of the soul where Christ is not seated on a throne, and you tour that castle where Christ doesn't reign, it's over. You're going to be in deception and delusion and spiritual darkness. It might appear helpful and cool, but it ends up in a mess because sin still reigns in that castle. There's no light. So it's a modern Western approach of grabbing onto this and searching yourself to find your truth and live your life. And you. Of course, you can go inside and find what you want. Teresa isn't telling us to look inward because the self is the ultimate authority. She's saying, if you want to know God, you have to be willing to honestly encounter what's happening inside of you. And if the gospel has taken root, if Christ has set up his throne, then of course you go to the depths of your inner soul to find Christ and his kingship, and you surrender yourself wholly to him so that your life can dissolve into his, and you now just live for God. Our text for this morning, 2 Corinthians, look at verse 15, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him. Christ said, whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. How could you possibly lose a life that you haven't explored? Teresa says it's foolish to think that we will enter heaven without entering into ourselves. And John Calvin echoes this closely. Calvin says you can't separate the two. You cannot truly know yourself without knowing God, and you cannot truly know God without coming to know yourself. If Christ abides in you, then the pitch here is to move inward is to move towards Christ. So here's the basic premise we're gonna look at. Prayer starts with an invitation to surrender. Surrender is a journey, and it's a long, arduous journey towards intimacy. And the result of that intimacy is transformation, transformed desires. That the things of this world fade, they lose their grip because we're being gripped by a deeper longing for your true home. This is what the writer of Hebrews is saying. They desired a better country, a heavenly one. So the interior castle is an ever deeper union with himself, with God, until love for him eclipses every lesser love. So how does this journey happen? It starts with surrender. For Americans in 21st century who try to have everything under our control, our tastes, our preferences, our needs, surrender is really hard because it involves vulnerability, trust, letting go, risk. It involves the unknown, and we don't like that. We want the outcomes already. We want the guarantees. We want insurance in case something goes bad. But I want to show you what this surrender might look like. The Novies are a Narnia family, and I think the best illustration of surrender comes from the silver chair. A girl named Jill is alone, and she's so thirsty, and she finally comes to the woods, to a stream, and the sight of water makes her 10 times thirstier. But she doesn't dare take a step closer, because near the edge of the stream stood a huge lion. It said, I wish I had the Dennis Prout voice for this, "Come and drink." It said, "Come and drink," but she didn't move. Again, it said with a deeper, wilder, stronger, sort of heavy, golden voice, "If you are thirsty, come and drink." "Are you not thirsty?" said the lion. "I'm dying of thirst," said Jill. "Then drink," said the lion. Would you mind going away while I do?" said Jill. The lion answered this only by a look and a very low growl. The delicious rippling noise of the stream was driving her nearly frantic. "Will you promise not to do anything to me if I do come?" said Jill. "I make no promise," said the lion. Jill was so thirsty now that without noticing it, she had taken a step closer. "Do you eat girls?" she said. "I have swallowed up girls and boys, women and men, kings and emperors, cities and realms," said the lion. It didn't say this as if it were boasting, nor as if it were sorry, nor as if it were angry. It just said it. "Well, I daren't come drink," said Jill. "Then you will die of thirst," said the lion. "I suppose I must go and look for another stream then," said Jill as she took another step closer. "There is no other stream," said the lion. Surrender. It's scary. Well, it was the worst thing she had ever had to do, but she went forward to the stream, knelt down, and began scooping up water in her hand. It was the coldest, most refreshing water she ever tasted. You didn't need to drink much of it, for it quenched your thirst at once. Surrender, coming near, actually allowing Christ to swallow you up, to consume you. It's a dangerous task that many, quite frankly, don't attempt. They like their nice, neat, safe Jesus. We're okay with a Jesus who's a helper and a shepherd and a friend, but not a lover. We don't necessarily want him to have complete access to us, the one that you truly get vulnerable with. That's very close to what happens in prayer. The soul stops managing God, stops negotiating, stops pretending, stops protecting itself. It simply comes like Jill to the stream, thirsty. That's the movement that Teresa describes. But how often are we living a guarded life? We make rules for God. We have conditions. I'll spend more time with you if, or I'll draw near to you if you don't bring up this area of my life. God's desire is for you to be fully open in your heart, open to life, open to the world. Jesus lived with this radical openness. He was the most open human being who ever walked the face of the earth. Think about that. If you pick up your cross and follow him, it means that you're walking down a path, the way of Christ, and the way of Christ is willing to experience deep pain, not to close off, but to open yourself to God and the world. This is what we see when Christ at the one moment where he could really show the heart of God, he opens himself to the world. He opens up. Sojourn, this is where God is shepherding us to be a people who give up control, who surrender, who are so countercultural in being honest with each other, being open, not shutting down, closing off, hiding, running, putting up walls, putting up layers. The way of Christ is to suffer and hope. It's to be ridiculed and forgive. It's to be completely misunderstood and be completely at peace because our Father knows us. Surrender is the path that leads to intimacy with God. Intimacy, this is a word that for many is uncomfortable. Maybe even the word in our culture has connotations, understandably, that we don't think belong in church. Jesus said, "This is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. They know. Our culture is not built for intimacy. And you know what? No culture is. The entire system of the world is not built to have flourishing, deep, loving bonds of knowing and forgiving and pursuing relationships. Do you know that the enemy of your soul desires distance and fear, resistance and walls, but to come close, to draw near, intimately near? John laying his head on Jesus' chest. Mary sitting at Christ's feet, just gazing and listening while Martha's doing all the chores and the stuff. But Mary just wants to be close. The very nature of God is intimacy, union. So if we humans were made from his nature, we were designed for intimacy. There's no way that God made you and formed you to be distant and closed off and partially known. God is not content with the next door neighbor over the fence kind of thing. Like, hey, how's it going, Jim? Good. All right. Sounds good. God longs to make himself known to us and for us to make ourselves known to him. And here's the crazy thing. Christ already knows everything about us. He's not on the outside going like, come on, please, I want to know more if you'll just let me know more about you. He knows the hairs on your head, every day of your life, every thought before you think it, the cravings of your heart. You can't hide anything from God. You can try to hide, which is what Adam and Eve did in the garden. But the invitation to come close and to share our lives to God is actually to help us. It's so that we learn how to trust and we can actually get our desires met, because at our core, this is how we're designed. We want to be known. Teresa says, prayer is nothing else than an intimate sharing between friends. It means taking the time to be alone with him who we know loves us. Notice, it's not just spending time with God. You can spend time with God and not become intimate. Just like you can spend time with friends every week and not actually get to know them. So there's that sharing component, that giving component in prayer. Now, some of you might be saying, especially maybe some of you guys, I don't know, Kyle. I'm not into all this intimate closeness, love language stuff. I spend time in the Word, I live a good life, I honor God, but all this union with God, affection, just sounds a bit much. I can guarantee you that feeling of resistance to intimacy does not come from the kingdom of God. And it does not please God. David was a warrior, a mighty man. And he says things like, my soul thirsts for you. My soul longs for you. I delight in you. I don't want anything else but you. My soul, he even says, clings to you. That's intimate language. Sin made intimacy uncomfortable for humans. We're more comfortable if we have a little bit of distance, right? Like, I'll follow God. I'll be close to him, but like, let me be kind of just over here. But the gospel gets rid of that distance. Christ has come near, all the way near, exposed, wounded, naked, vulnerable, embarrassed, publicly ridiculed. Does that sound like Hebrews 11? That's Christ's nearness. Sin put distance, but Christ came near. He tore the curtain. We got to see right into the heart of God. No veil, no cloud, just the raw cry of God's heart. Father, forgive them. We actually see that God is for us. He wants to be close. He wants union. Abide in me, says Christ. Remain in me. Delight in me. Sojourn, there is a pasture for us to feast in. And our good shepherd is inviting us into that pasture. It's a place of intimacy where the substance of our conversations isn't football scores and weather and kids' schedules. Look, none of those things are bad. But we need to be operating at another place where friends who've known each other here for 10 years, who've worshiped together hundreds of times, who've partaken in the body and blood of Christ, can actually have real heart-to-heart moments and not just do the shallow bro thing, where men weep together, where older women can pour into the lives of young ladies like Teresa did and say right to their face, fight. Fight with everything you have as a person. Walk by faith, not by sight. Go deeper in your prayer life. Let's go deeper in communing with Christ. And this is where an intimate community becomes a transformed community. The more deeply we know him, the more our desires begin to change. When you're on the edge of the castle of your soul, you want lots of other things. Teresa talks about this. Wealth, prestige, recognition, lusts, you name it. But the more intimate you become with God, you just don't want any of that. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5, the love of Christ controls us, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him. The love of Christ controls or compels. The Greek word suneko paints the picture of being held tightly, pressed on all sides, or being gripped by something so powerfully that it governs what you do. Think of it this way. Christ's love has such a grip on my heart that I cannot live any other way. I simply want to please him. We make it our goal, it says in verse 9, to please him. It's similar to some English expressions we say like, I couldn't help keep quiet, or I had no choice but to step in, or everything in me just had to do it. Has the gospel gone all the way down? Do you want Christ to control you? The love of Christ doesn't merely make us feel loved. It takes hold of us. It begins to govern what we want and what we pursue and how we spend our lives. And this is the strange paradox of Christianity. The more we're controlled by Christ, the more free we truly become. Because we're no longer living inside this tiny kingdom of me, my preferences, my reputation, my comfort, my fears, my desires. We're free to live for him and desire what he wants. And the evidence becomes really clear. The things of this world begin to lose their grip. So what it feels like to be close to God is that I discover I'm not quite at home here anymore. I'm longing for more. This is where the Christian life gets strange. The more deeply we know Christ, the more we realize this isn't my home. We can love God's creation. We can love our families. We can enjoy food and beauty and friendship and nature, work, music, all of it. And yet something in us aches for something that none of those things can give us. That's the ache of the sojourner. Teresa describes the feeling of longing like this. The soul feels a strange solitude, for no creature in all the earth can keep it company. Everything on earth seems to weary it, and its life seems like a long exile. Sound like Hebrews? It sees clearly that it wants nothing else than to be with its God, but it cannot reach him yet, and so its pain is exceedingly great. This exile is what Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians. We'd rather be at home with him. And it's exactly what's referenced in Hebrews 11. They were searching for a better country. They weren't satisfied. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim. Have earthly things grown dim for you? Maybe how you answer that can be a clue. Maybe we're too attached and too safe and too comfortable. Because for the people we're looking at in Hebrews, the ache, the longing, the pain, the tension of living by faith, when I don't see it, was immense. It's not just a clue that the world has a grip on us. It's a clue that we haven't become intimate knowers and lovers of God yet. It's a clue I know for myself well. Friends, I urge you, be crazy enough to plumb the depths of your soul. Don't get to the end and say, I had 70, 80, 90 years, and to be honest, I really didn't go down there much. And I'm not talking about just going down to my emotions. We're talking way beyond that. Setting my life towards understanding what's going on in my soul. That Christ desires oneness, intimacy, union, a life entirely wrapped up and hidden in his life. Just 5 years after writing her masterpiece, The Interior Castle, on her deathbed, you can really get a sense of Teresa's heart. These were her last words. "Oh, my Lord and my spouse, the hour I have so much desired has finally come. It is time at last to depart from this exile and for my soul to enjoy that which it has so deeply longed for, to be with you forever." Friends, while we wait for that day when we can be with him, we come to this table. And we come to this table every week to build that desire. This is where the longing gets stirred and awakened. This is where we commune with Christ and we remember. We abide in him